In this session of the Purple Coffee Podcast, I speak to Jayson Gaignard about the important importance of defining your success and how vital it is to strive towards it. Oh yes. Hello and welcome to session 31 of the Purple Coffee Podcast, inspiring entrepreneurial stories from some of the world's finest. I am your host, Turndog, and on this occasion I speak to the inspiring Jayson Gaignard about how important it is to make sure you strive to your version of success, because the alternative is to live in a life of apathy and dissatisfaction, and he shares some fine tales indeed. And if you don't know who Jayson Gaignard is, like seriously, where have you been hiding? He's the main man behind Mastermind Talks, which for one is an annual invite-only conference which features some of the world's finest speakers. In the past, he's had Tim Ferriss speak, James Altucher, Mark Ecko, Clay Hebert. My gosh, the list goes on and on. Seriously, if you head over to tdog.co/Purple Coffee 31, I'll be linking to Jayson in his world. You need to check out Mastermind Talks. You may not be able to go this year, you may not even be able to go next year, but it should be on your bucket list to go at some point, because you will be in a room where you won't even be close to being the smartest. This is one of the finest conferences there is. But it's also manifested into a fine podcast where he invites a lot of the people he knows. And it's difficult to define who Jayson is and what he does exactly, because for the most part, he just connects one another with each other. He is a fantastic connector, and he does things like mastermind dinners. He's now an author. He is one cool cat indeed. And I'm delighted to have him part of both the Success and Mistake book and this very podcast, where he talks about his journey from his old life to his new one, and how even though he was a success on the outside in his old life, you know, with money and success, and he knew people and it was all good and happy, he eventually found himself into debt because he was just chasing the widget. He was chasing shadows. He was chasing a version of success which he was never going to reach. But all this forced him to reevaluate and think what really made him click. He took some major risks, and his story is so inspiring, and it will terrify you, quite frankly. It terrified me, and it's like, oh my God, I can't believe you did that. But at the same time, wow, it means so much to see that people like Jayson can do something risky, take a bit of a chance, and turn it all around. It's an absolute fine tale indeed. So yeah, I reached out to Jayson. He was someone I just had to have involved in the Success and Mistake, because I found him through Mastermind Talks. I saw just all the people he'd connected with and brought together in a fine conference, and all I could consider was, this guy is a guy that needs to be part of the Success and Mistake. He has some stories to share, and oh my, it took a little bit of time to track him down. He's one busy kid, but once I did, he jumped on Skype with me and blew my mind, and he's been such a help in my world ever since. He's a charmer, he's a true cool cat, and he loves to connect people, and he knows everyone, but in a very real way. He doesn't just know them by name, he has genuine connections. And what you can learn through Jayson in forming and nurturing real connections is huge. You will take so much value, not just from this interview, but from everything he shares in the online world in general. So be sure to check out tdog.co/Purple Coffee 31, and yeah, buy his book, check out his site, his podcast, everything. The more you devour of Mr. Jayson, the better you will feel. He always brings a bit of a spark into my world. So before we get into the conversation and this awesome chit chat, I will just read a quick story I created in Jayson's honor that will hopefully share a little bit more about him and his awesome ways. So I'll do that right now, and then we'll listen to past me and past him talk about mistakes and such. So I honestly have no idea what Jayson Gaignard does with his day. I find it even hard to describe what it is he does in general. Sure, he has a book or two to his name and an uber popular podcast, and is the main man behind Mastermind Talks, which places far too many inspiring people in a single room during a single time. So much awesome may cause the world to implode one day. So yeah, thanks for that, Jayson. I find it difficult to comprehend this average day because he knows too many awesome folk. He must eat 9 meals a day and live on a phone and drink enough coffee to kill a moose, and a big one at that. So I suppose I'll leave it with the fact that he just connects awesome people and builds epic audiences and is generally one of the most meaningful and super connectors there is. Because that's a far better description than speaker, author, and moose killing coffee drinker. So yeah, here's Mr. Gaignard. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me, and indeed my guest today, Jayson Gaignard, who is the man behind Mastermind Talks, among other things. And if you haven't checked out and come across Mastermind Talks before, then I encourage you to do so. Maybe not right now, watch the interview first, but then go ahead and do it, because it is basically a conference / gathering of some of the most amazing minds you can imagine. And I remember the first time I came across it on the website, I think I had a bit of a heart murmur. I was like, there's just too much awesome in one room. I couldn't believe it was real. I'm not going to spoil the names of the people involved because I'll let Jayson talk more about that. He's far more qualified to talk about his world than me. So Jayson, thank you so much for joining me this evening.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, and I hope I live up to the introduction.
Oh, I'm sure you will. I'm excited to unearth your big mistake. This is all in aid for my book, The Successful Mistake, but we're going to be talking about Jayson, about a few other things. And let's start things off. Just describe a little bit about who you are and what it is you do. I know you do a few things, so.
Sure. Who I am. So I basically I'm not a trained entrepreneur. I didn't go to school for it. I dropped out of high school and kind of landed into entrepreneurship by default. And so many mistakes I've made along this path. But yeah, I mean, as of right now, I run an annual invite-only event for entrepreneurs called Mastermind Talks, which is almost like a TED Talks for entrepreneurs to a degree. It's a in order to attend, it's you have to apply. In our first event, we had 4,200 entrepreneurs from all over the world apply, and we only accept 120. So it's actually statistically, one of our attendees brought this up to me, that statistically it's harder to get into our event than it is to get into Harvard. So um, so yeah, no. So we just finished off our second event, which was 2 weeks ago, and that takes the majority of my time. I also sit on the board for the Entrepreneurs Organization, which is pretty much the world's largest organization for entrepreneurs. And that's it in a nutshell. I'm a father, and I have a 3-month-old daughter. So.
Oh, well, congratulations. I've got a little 16-month-old, and oh, you've got all the fun to come. I look back on my time with my 3-month-old and remember how he just laid there and was unable to move. Now I can't get him to sit still for more than 7 seconds.
Well, just looking, I would have never guessed you had a child because you don't seem like you have too many gray hairs. I'm missing some spots here and there.
Oh,
It's from
yeah.
entrepreneurship and parenting, but yeah.
I'm older than I feel. Let's just say, yeah, much older than sometimes people think I'm younger, but no, I've got a few years to me, and yeah, so enjoy the 3-month-old area. When they're just able to lay there, it's bliss.
Awesome. We'll do.
Well, I must say, I mean, before we get going into the successful mistake, I want to just really, out of my own interest, talk about how Mastermind Talks began and came about. Because, like I
Sure.
say, some of the people you've been involved in it, they're very hard individuals to get hold of, to get them to come together in a single event. I can imagine it's a minefield.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can go over my story really quickly, which involves that. So,
Mm.
when I left high school, I dropped out of high school. I started a service-based business, and I realized that service-based businesses are hard to scale, which is mistake number one. I pivoted into an online product business, which I grew to about $6 million a year over 4 years with no outside investments. Now that's 6 million US, so a little less than your local currency, but. I was living the whole quote unquote 4 hour work week. I was traveling the world, making a ton of money. But with all that money and all that free time, you start climbing up Maslow's hierarchy of needs and you start asking yourself, like, why am I here? Will I be remembered? And I was not happy with the answers I was giving myself at the time. And around that time, I realized I was making 22 times the national average income year over year. And it was bothersome to me because I felt like I was not 22 times happier than the average male. I was not 22 times healthier. 2 years prior, when I was 23, I had kidney complications because of stress. So that's another mistake. Is building my business at the expense of my health. So consciously, I decided to sell my business. Subconsciously, I started to remove myself from the business and scale it downwards. And I was scaling it downwards over the course of a year, and two things happened that were beyond my control that landed me $250,000 in cash debt, which was August of 2012. So I had no business, no cash flow, had no clue what I was going to do next. And somebody gave me a ticket to go see Seth Godin in New York. And I've been a huge fan of Seth's. He's a New York Times bestselling author, multiple New York Times bestselling author books that he's written. And I went to this little mini seminar, and it was called The Connection Economy, and how there's huge value connecting like-minded individuals. And at the time, I'm like, there's no group as disconnected as entrepreneurs because they're all working in their own little businesses and stuff like that. So I started these things called mastermind dinners, where I'd help connect 6 to 8 entrepreneurs over dinner who didn't know each other. And the first one I did, I was canceled 2 hours prior because I'm like, nobody's going to see value in this. They're going to think I wasted their time. But thankfully, I followed through with it. And the first dinner was a huge success. And I kept on doing these dinners. And they cost me $600-700 to put on. And people thought I was crazy because I was $250,000 in cash debt. But at the time, I was considering bankruptcy. That was an option. I had nothing left, and I'm like, the bank could take my car, they could take whatever measly assets I have left, but they can't take my relationships. So whatever money I had left, I invested in myself, and I invested in my relationships at the time. And probably about 4 or 5 months into that, I had an opportunity to do an event with Tim Ferriss. I've known Tim for a few years, and he had a book coming out called The 4 Hour Chef. And his book was actually banned from all the Barnes and Noble's bookstores in the States, which is a big deal, 1,100 bookstores. And when you're a Tim Ferriss and you're a New York Times bestselling author, your first one's a bestseller, the second one's a bestseller, the expectations is your third one's going to be a bestseller as well. So he had a lot riding on his shoulders, and we ended up coming with this deal, coming up with a deal where I bought a bulk order of his books, and he would do 2 speaking engagements with us, and that's how that's how I got into the event space. I thought I could do what I do in these dinners on a larger scale. So instead of having 6 to 8 people at dinner, I could have a room filled with 100 amazing entrepreneurs. And the goal was to simply break even and have a great event. And it went so well, we decided to make a business out of it. And we had our second event 2 weeks ago and proved that the first one wasn't fluke. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Outstanding. And it is. I mean, like I say, the amount of amazing entrepreneurs in that one room doing those talks, I was just in awe when I came across it. And yeah, so it's amazing how it all started from, these meals, which I suppose were your last chance saloon.
Yeah, yeah, no, they worked out really well, and I still do them from time to time whenever I can. But and I know a few people. It's one of those things. Again, it's we all have a yearning to be connected to like-minded individuals, whether you're an entrepreneur or the spouse of an entrepreneur, or somebody who's aspiring entrepreneur. It's one of those things, and over-connected society like Facebook and Twitter, we think we have deep relationships when we really don't.
Mm.
So having those kind of face-to-face interactions, there's is priceless and timeless to a degree. So I try to do those dinners. I still try to host those dinners as often as possible because there's huge value in them.
Wow. And I certainly believe that we live in a relationship culture and society. And like you say, the banks can take away your cars and houses and whatnot. But if you're going to have to get in a little bit more debt, they're not going to be able to steal your relationships away, which
Yeah.
is a huge thing. It comes up time and time again in my interviews. So let's delve a little bit more into this mistake, or the series of mistakes, because that journey, I suppose, led up to sort of the demise in 2012, which kick-started all these amazing things for you. But what led to that demise in the first place?
Well, like I said before, I mean, before the interview, we were talking about. I'm like, it's like the death of 1,000 paper cuts. Many bad, many decisions and little bad mistakes that kind of compounded over time. But I think one of the biggest ones was starting a business for the wrong reasons, or picking the wrong business. This is actually something I never really ever spoke about or really identified until you said, what's the one big thing? And the reason is because as entrepreneurs, we're often taught to pick our business based on opportunity and proximity, right? Where's the money, and chase that to a degree. Not necessarily, what are we passionate about, what lights us up, that kind of stuff. And you hear time and time again where entrepreneurs build these businesses, at the expense of their health, at the expense of their relationships, and they achieve their financial goal, or they're getting close to achieving their financial goal, and they get there and they're like, now what? And they're left unfulfilled. And that's where I was. And that's how, to a degree, I had to kind of sabotage myself out of that, because I knew as long as I had a plan B, which was a business that took care of all my wants and needs financially, I never follow through with plan A, which was to create a business that would truly light me up. So, I built this business basically almost like I'm a firm believer, like 90% of our goals that we're pursuing are the goals of somebody else, right? Of either like the goals of society, of our parents, or whatever the case may be. We're modeling after somebody else to a degree. And in the case of, my first business, it was my mentors at the time were very financially focused, and financially they were very successful. So that was my model of success. And then when I got there, I realized how, unfulfilling it was to just simply build a business for those reasons. So that was the biggest thing, is I think maybe starting with the end in mind. What do you really, so you have a business, what is that for? What kind of lifestyle do you want? And then kind of reverse engineer from there. Because that's something I did not do. And it's a common theme I see amongst many, many successful entrepreneurs.
Absolutely, it's quite often the goal, isn't it? People want to set up their own business because they have this dream of making all this money. But I mean, what does it ultimately that mean? Because you say your goal's to earn 1 million. Well, you get to 1 million, then what?
Sure.
10 million, then you get to a 10 million, and then what? And like you said, you were what, 2,200 times above the average wage in America, whatever. But what did it mean? You didn't feel particularly 2,200 times happier.
Yeah.
Your health wasn't really replicating in that sense.
Sure. I mean, I know there's a study they published in the United States that if you make anything above, like, I don't know, $73,000 a year, it doesn't increase your happiness. I don't believe if that's necessarily true. It seems like a low number, but at the same time, there is truth to it, that once you reach, whatever your needs are for, to live a comfortable life, anything over and above that, is nice, and it's a good safety net, but it's not necessary for the most part, right? So that's the thing, is a lot of us, especially as entrepreneurs, where we delay our happiness, or we delay the lifestyle we want because we're always shooting for more. And then when we get there, we're like, well, what was this all for? Like, I have all this money now, but I don't care to do much with it, or what the case may be. So yeah, it's a common pain point I see in a lot of entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and I see it a great deal myself, where people seem to be very money focused in the beginning, and they make their money and they get in ultimately bad health, whether it's some kind of, disease, or just, putting on weight, whatever it might be, and then rediscovering that fitness in their 30s or their 40s, because they realize, oh, all this money has only done so much. It hasn't necessarily brought me fulfillment in the greater good. So they look into other things, whether it be yoga or meditation or travel or eating or whatever it might be. And they realised that, they started off with money in mind, but it only took them so far.
Yeah.
It's the emotional fulfillment, which then takes them to the real promised land.
Well, we say, we have a saying at Mastermind Talks that an entrepreneur is somebody who goes from working in their business to on their business. But there's a second tier of entrepreneur that you come across that goes from working on their business to working on themselves. And that seems like the evolution to a degree, is a lot of entrepreneurs that we focus on the money right out of the gate, because that's what we're told to do, and that's what society is kind of laid out for us, is that in order to be happy, you need to financially, be very successful. And then once you get there, then you start saying, okay, well, now what? Now what? How can I contribute to society, or to my family, or become a better father or husband, or healthier, and that kind of stuff. And it's very, like you said, it's very common that you see people start using their energy that they use to grow their business, to using that same energy towards their health, and they run a marathon. You know what I mean? Like, in our intake forms for Mastermind Talks, one of our things we ask is like, what's on your bucket list? And so many people have these, like, marathon, triathlons, like that kind of stuff. Like, entrepreneurs have an incredible amount of bandwidth and energy, and you can channel that in any way. So it's not uncommon that you see somebody very successful in business pivot and become very successful in something else, whether it be a nonprofit, or even, mastering their own health, or whatever the case may be.
Well, I suppose one of the great people of that is, who you mentioned earlier, Tim Ferriss, who, always seems to be hacking some kind of thing, whether it's his body or his mindset. And it always seems like a new re-pivot, right? What can I analyze and research now and then take to the next level?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, he's a great example of that. And Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett, the one thing they talk about as well is every year they sit down and they want to remove one thing that they're ignorant about from their life. So if it's like, something financial, that's their focus for the year, or if it's, health or whatever. And Tim is actually a good example of that, where he kind of cracked the code as far as being nomadic and working overseas and doing all that kind of stuff. And then really wanted to kind of deep dive into health and fitness head first. He did that, and then wanted to deep dive. He was always a poor chef, so
Yeah.
he deep dove and wrote in the 4 Hour Chef. So he's actually a great example of that.
Man, I think if I had to remove all my ignorance, I would have to live for a very long
Yes.
time. Jesus. I would have to live till I'm about 2,000 years old, I feel
Well,
like.
I honor your self-awareness.
Yes, that's right. That's right. So you talk about earlier the idea of sabotaging. So you had this, reasonably successful business. On the outside looking in, you would have seemed happy, I suppose, but
Sure.
your health was damaged. You weren't really that fulfilled. Was there a particular moment where the light bulb clicked and you thought, I'm not going down the right path here? And did that ultimately lead you to the demise and getting in debt? It's just when you
Yeah.
mentioned self-sabotage, how did that come about?
So one of those things is when you get successful as an entrepreneur, um, or successful in anything, it's easy to get complacent, and it's easy to get comfortable, and you lose that edge. And one of the things I actually became clear about recently as to one of the core reasons why I probably sabotaged the business. And sabotage in entrepreneurship is actually very common, which is not spoken about all that much. And also some people are not aware of it, that they're sabotaging themselves, but it's very, very common. But for one thing is that when I was successful, and I mean, I had the freedom of time and money. That's one thing is, as entrepreneurs, we're always pursuing freedom, but it's freedom to and freedom from. It's the freedom to do what we want, when we want, wherever we want, but we also need the freedom from our business to do those things. So I had both of those freedoms. I could do whatever I want, whenever I wanted. I had and that from that perspective, I was quote unquote living a life. So I was successful, and I became complacent, and I became bored. And something I became clear on recently is that I'm the type of person, and many entrepreneurs as well, where we find peace in chaos. When things are going, crazy or whatever, that's when we feel the most fulfilled. We feel like that's our calling, is to, be up, have our back against the wall and overcome adversity and that kind of stuff. And one of the core reasons for entrepreneurs sabotaging themselves is because when they get too comfortable, they have to create chaos in order to feel, important to their business, or important to those kind of things. And that was kind of one of the core things as well. Is that when I got there, I started to lose vision as to what the future would hold, and I just started making decisions to kind of put my back up against the wall, because I knew I performed best when my back was against the wall.
Wow. And it's funny you say that, because I was speaking to a few friends of mine not so long ago about that idea as, business owners and entrepreneurs, you always need that pressure and that challenge. And if you start getting complacent and lethargic about something, the demise is just inevitable, whether it's today
Yeah.
or tomorrow or a year down the line, because you need that drive. And comes back to what you said in the beginning, the idea of passion. Because if you build a business built on your passion, you'll always be able to re-pivot and go down a different route to keep that passion going. Say your
Sure.
passion is, setting up businesses. Well, after a while, you do that long enough, you can start thinking, well, I want to create a not-for-profit, which is helping other people set up new businesses. And you
Yeah.
throw all your passion into that. And there's always going to be a new challenge. There's always going to be that vigor to keep on going.
Absolutely. And that's the ultimate safety net as well, right? If you work something that's from your passion, at the end of the day, you will always have that, and you'll always be happy. You may not have money, because the truth is, when you start a business, it takes a while to start making money for the
It
most
does,
part.
yes.
So at least, if you're not making money, you at the end of the day, you still have your passion, and that's great. As opposed to if you're pursuing something simply for the sake of money and you're not making money out of the gate, it's going to be pretty miserable.
Is this what ultimately led you to, forming these relationships? And, you did $250,000 in debt, and here you are throwing $600-700 meals to bring entrepreneurs together. Was that where the passion came from? You just wanted to, form these connections?
Well, I got clarity at the first dinner I did, that connecting entrepreneurs was something I want to do to some capacity for the rest of my life. Not necessarily as a business, but that was the first time in a long time that I lost track of time.
Wow.
And to me, that was a great indicator that this is something I'm passionate about. Because it's easy to say, ask somebody, what are you passionate about? It's actually hard to kind of pinpoint when somebody asks you like straight up like that. But for me, one thing I love to drill on myself and get others to drill as well from time to time is right at the top of a page. I lose track of time when dot dot dot, and then just start listing stuff like don't stop. Anything that comes to mind, like I lose track of time when I'm with my daughter. I lose track of time when I'm surrounded by entrepreneurs. I lose track of time when I'm driving my car, whatever the case may be, and just keep on listing them. And then when you can't list no more, take a good look at that list. And there's a lot of things within there. You'll start seeing some commonalities of things, that may be the root of what you're passionate about. And it's not one of those things like, oh, I found my passion and this is going to keep me energized and motivated for the rest of my life. Like I think it's very much like almost like an onion, and you peel the layers off over time to really what your unique ability is, what you're world class at, and what truly lights you up. So, this may not be. I would do this business right now to the age of 90 easily. But there's a good chance I'll find something else or a different variation of this that I'm more passionate about, and continue to kind of peel off those layers over time.
I absolutely love that. And obviously, if you've got passion at the forefront, you're never going to go too far wrong. And I was doing an interview just earlier on, which was pinpointing the similar kind of things. Sometimes it's a case of discovering what your passion is and then maybe just trying to tweak that a little bit so it combines with a need or a skill set of some kind. There is that idea of making money, but if you're always following the passion, there's always going to be good things coming from it.
Absolutely, and it's one of those things like a lot of people get kind of steered in the wrong direction when they're like, "Well, just follow your passion and you'll be successful," and
Mm.
that's not necessarily the case. You do have to if you find out the root of what you're passionate about. Like for example, trying to think of, I like to write. I don't write that much, but I should be writing more. But I love to write. Could I make a career out of writing? Probably, but you're not. It's very difficult to make be very successful at financially becoming a writer. But if you dig deeper and I identify all those other times I lose track of time, you'll find out that the core thing about all of those, the similarities, is that I just love being creative.
Yeah.
I love being in a creative space. I love a space where I can kind of create stuff like that. So once you kind of nail that down, then after that you can say, okay, well, what business can I, create from this center of like this is my passion, right? I love being creative. What business can kind of branch off of this instead of being like most people be like, I love writing, I'm going to become a writer. And although that's some people's path, that's totally honorable. You can often find one of the root things of your passion that you can actually make a very profitable business from.
Yeah, and I love how it's like peeling an onion, like you say. You start off with a passion, but it might be, okay, I can't really focus on just this passion, but what's the layer below that, and what's the layer below that, and let's see where this path takes me. And usually there's a combination between a few things that, it's like that light bulb moment, and you're like, yes, this is it.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Well, I think it's a fantastic insight, and I love how it's taken you a journey where you was successful, and it was ultimately this self sabotage, which all stemmed from complacency, and I can totally see that in so many different kind of people where they're fantastic, and once they get to the top, all of a sudden little depressions come in, and you see this with actors and musicians and artists where for so long they've just dreamt about being at the top, and then when they get at the top they're still depressed because it wasn't really where they wanted to be. They
Yeah.
wanted to be involved in the art form more.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
what would your advice be to someone who's maybe just setting out, they're maybe just setting up a new business, they're fairly new into their journey? What would you kind of say to help look for these signposts, I guess?
I'd say I'd get clear on what the end goal is, and just be very clear of that. Like for me, I'm not clear. I don't know. If you ask any entrepreneur, I have a friend of mine who's a venture capitalist and invests in business all the time. And he's like, business plans are BS. And I've always been from that mindset as well. But I'm like, why do you think they're BS? You're a VC. You should be looking at business plans all the time and stuff like that. He's like, and you never look at a person's business plan, and they never say that they'll lose money in the first 5 years, when 95% of businesses lose money in the first 5 years, right? So he's like, that's why they're BS. So we're terrible at predicting things from a business perspective. But I'm very clear on the lifestyle I want, and that I will have in 3 years. I don't know what business or avenues I'm going to have to take to get there. I mean, business moves so quickly that you have to be able to adjust all the time. But I'm very clear what the end goal is for me. And that, I think, is really important, because I didn't have that before. And now what I'm clear what that end goal looks like what basically I identify what my perfect day looks like. Where am I waking up? Who am I waking up next to? It's my wife in this case. What are we having for breakfast? What does my work look like? Not necessarily what I'm doing for work, but am I working all day long? Am I working, just after breakfast till noon and then spending the afternoon with my daughter? Like, getting very clear on that, and then building a business that will enable you to do that at one point in time. And for me, that was actually, I became clear on that whole perfect day when I hit rock bottom. When I was $250,000 in cash debt and had no clue what I was going to do next, I did that exercise, and it worked great for me at the time. And I didn't think it would have this benefit, but I used it as a filter, because any opportunity that came my way, I could ask myself, is this going to take me closer to my perfect day, or is it going to take me further away? So I had plenty of opportunities. I could be in a way better financial situation right now, or financial position, if I jumped at some of the, the very financially lucrative opportunities that came my way, just two years ago. But I wouldn't be where I am from a wealth perspective. I've never felt wealthier in my life. And that's because, again, I'm very clear on what I want, and anything that comes my way that's going to take me further away from that, I simply won't take on.
And that's fantastic, and I love that, because it allows you to sort of put, a cap on the finances. Because if your dream is to live in, tropical islands in, Southeast Asia or somewhere, you're not going to need to be a millionaire.
Sure.
Relatively low cost of living. You don't need to have loads and loads of money to travel the land everywhere. Most of the time, when people are nomads, they don't even have a house or a car. So all that idea of, I need to make millions, it's like, no, I just maybe need to make 100,000 a year, and I'll be able to live this lifestyle more than happily. And all of a sudden, then you're thinking, well, I'll be able to make £100,000 a year by doing X, Y, and Z. I might not be able to make a million of it, but I don't need a million.
It definitely, yeah. I mean, Tim actually talks about it in the 4-Hour Work Week, where you don't have to have $1 million in the bank to live like a millionaire. And it's very, very true. I mean, he was a great example of that. And oftentimes when you get clear and you identify what you want, even if it's like, I want a Ferrari or something crazy like that. When you look at a Ferrari in the United States, to lease one is like $2,000 a month, which is not that insane. You know what I mean? Like, if that's something you really, really want. So I mean, a lifestyle, if you're smart, $10,000 a month in the United States, you live a pretty good life after tax. So it's one of those things. Again, it's the freedom to do what you want, but the freedom from your business. And that's a lot of people make that mistake, is they get the freedom to do what they want, but they're so tied into their business that they can't actually enjoy the fruits of their labor. So it's not this isn't necessarily like, you should build a 4-Hour Work Week business, because that's not the answer necessarily either. But you can definitely, build with the end in mind, because at the end of the day, my model is that the core function of business is to make money, and there's going to be impact and positive stuff for the community and all that kind of stuff, and that's a side benefit. But the reason why we build businesses is because it makes money. Money at its core purpose is to perpetuate experiences in our day-to-day lives. In essence, that's the core function of what we use money for now. So if you're clear on what you want your day-to-day life to look like, and you just start working your way back, and build your business around that, and you can build a business in any industry that'll accommodate your lifestyle for the most part.
I love that approach, I really do, and I feel like money does, it taints too many people. They get this idea in mind, and when they actually delve into what they truly want, they don't need nearly anywhere near that amount of money. And ultimately, if you gave me millions and millions, I wouldn't have any idea what to do with it. Like, I know some people would be able to spend millions like that, but I'd just be like, well, that'll stay in the bank for a little while, because as long as you're living your lifestyle, I mean, what else matters? And you don't necessarily need millions to do that. So,
I mean, my mindset now is the more money I make, the more I can do for others and stuff like that. It's not, I mean, it's hard, believe it or not, like, even making $1 million a year, it's hard to spend that on yourself. You know what I mean? So
I won't be able to do it. I look at these NFL players and I'm just thinking, how are they? It's like, I couldn't really imagine walking around with hands full of bling rings and the neck pieces and stuff. But I suppose some people want that, so that's
Sure,
great.
exactly.
Well, it's
Some
been
of
an
us grow with it, so
yeah, maybe it's an American thing. I don't know. Us Brits maybe a little bit more low key. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, Jayson. It's been a fantastic insight, and what a journey it's been. And I feel like this could really help certain young and new entrepreneurs reflect, because chances are they've started a new business and they did have this money thing in mind. Whereas if they take a step back and actually ask themselves, do I need to be focused on money? The answer is more than likely no. And they can focus on more on the lifestyle and the passion, and then allow things to work from that. And usually money is an offset of stuff like that anyway.
exactly. Money definitely will come. It may come a little slower, but it'll come a lot easier. And like I said, I mean, a lot of people have figured out how to make money. However, very few people have figured out how to be wealthy. And there's a big difference. And I mean, you can have both. There's no question there. So, and I definitely don't want to position like money is the root of evil, because it's not. I mean, the more the merrier, really, because money simply amplifies who you are. If you're a jerk, with more money, you'll be even more of a jerk. But if you're a fantastic person, like a Mother Teresa, you give a Mother Teresa $100 million, she's going to do some interesting things with it. So,
I read that just the other day, in fact. I forget where, but I read that, it's an amplification of who you are. If you're a good person with a lot of money, you're just going to be able to do more good. But if you're an
yeah,
asshole with a lot of money, you're probably just going to carry on being an a-hole.
absolutely.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, Jayson. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm sure everyone watching and listening has taken a great deal from it. So, yeah, cheers.
Thank you for having me on.
Cheers.
Bye.
And there you have it, kids. Another session of the Purple Coffee Podcast and an end. A big thank you to you for listening and being part of this journey. It means a great deal. And a huge thanks to Jayson for taking the time out of his awesome day to share his great mistake, both for my book, The Successful Mistake, and this very podcast. Speaking of The Successful Mistake, if you want to learn more about it, head over to tdog.co/purplecoffee31. You'll be able to find out all about the book, plus highlights of this podcast, few tweetables, and all the links you need for Jayson and Mastermind Talks and everything that he does. He is someone you should follow. He will bring so much inspiration into your world. I cannot now imagine a life without Jayson. He is so awesome, and what an inspiring story. I love how so many entrepreneurs find success relatively early in their life. It might be that they hit across, some kind of gap in the market. They get the money, they get the big house, they get the car. This is what Jayson had. He was successful on the outside, but was he happy? Not so much. And when you're not happy, you continue to chase. You get greedy, you do more, you push, and more often than not, you find yourself in big debt and everything crumbles around you. But where Jayson really set himself apart here is he took a risk, and he thought, banks can take everything from me, but they cannot take my relationships. So what can I do to nurture them? What can I do right now to make sure I bring true value, not in just my life, but those around me? And he took some chances. He set up some dinners. He had no idea if they were going to work, but with a great intention and an awesome go-getting self, he brought people together. And I'm a firm believer that if you bring people together and share the love, good things will happen. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe even not next month or next year, but at some point. And today, Jayson is absolutely rocking it. Quite frankly, Mastermind Talks is one of the go-to events in the entire calendar year in general, not just within the business world, but full stop. It's on my bucket list. I hope to be part of it one day. It's an inspiration. But his podcast is awesome. He's a great writer, and yeah, he's just a great connector. So I'm so proud to have him part of this journey with myself, and I hope you've taken a great deal of inspiration from him. So yeah, check out tdog.co/purplecoffee31. Check out all his links, follow him, and yeah, be part of his entire world. You can thank me later. And while there, I hope you will consider subscribing, rating, and reviewing this very podcast on iTunes or Stitcher or however else you listen. All the links are on there. It should be pretty self-explanatory, but if you ever have any issues, you just know where to find me. Speaking of which, always feel to reach out to me via email or Twitter or Facebook and let me know what you think could be improved regarding this podcast. I love to converse, so do not be shy. And that's it. Thank you so much for listening and being part of this. Have a most awesome day. Until next time, keep up the rockingness. Cheers.